This video issues a warning to Americans, particularly African Americans, who take the decision to join the German masquerader side. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjeet Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. In Thomas Paine's words, we are living in times that will try men's souls. Very soon, almost every human being on earth will be forced to make decisions whether he will choose to do the right thing or, for the sake of self preservation, choose what is convenient and make a commitment to what he thinks will be the winning side. Often, the trouble with choosing what one thinks is the winning side is that after victory, the side may lose the next war, and one finally ends up on the losing side. Ultimately, you will find from the Bible that the only way to survive the coming catastrophes alive is with God's help, and that help can be obtained only by doing the right thing. So, now let's discuss the situation in the United States. Conditions for a civil war have been brewing for the past 6 decades. The protagonists will be the same as in the American Civil War from 1861 to 1865. White people of German descent, whom I call German masqueraders, and their allies, versus white people of non German descent and their allies. The American Civil War was fought between the South, led by German masqueraders, who wanted to keep slavery intact and carve out a country for themselves. Almost immediately after the Second World War, the Nazis made contact with German masqueraders in America, and a plan was developed to help Germany recover quickly, become economically and militarily strong. Masqueraders helped Germany with nuclear weapons and rocket technology, which was developed by the United States with the help of German scientists such as Werner von Braun, who were brought to the United States after the war, with which they developed nuclear weapons in China then. One product of their research into ICBMs and nuclear technology in the early 1960s was the ability to communicate electronically into the ears of people. The Germans immediately saw its value in forcing people with threats to do whatever they wanted them to do. A conspiracy was soon hatched to take over the country for themselves by killing all white people of non German descent and their allies. For this purpose, they would choose they would use any other people in America that they could to achieve their goal, particularly African Americans being the largest minority at that time. Italians, particularly the mobsters, were also their willing allies. The murders started almost immediately, beginning with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The murders picked up steam when Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett took the helm of German masquerader activities in the United States in the early 1970s. When the atrocities committed by German masqueraders were fully discovered around 2000 to 2001, they had succeeded in murdering nearly 10 million white Americans of non German descent and forced 40 million babies, mostly white, to be aborted. These horrible crimes by Germany and German masqueraders will not be forgotten or forgiven. When their atrocities were discovered, to avoid justice, all the German masqueraders in America wanted to flee to Germany for protection. At that time, Satan told the Germans that they should be told to stay in their own countries and not be allowed to settle in Germany. The Germans have forced all German masqueraders to obey Satan's order. That's why, after his treatment for poisoning in Germany, the German masquerader Alexei Navalny was told to go back to Russia. For the same reason, the German masquerader Vladimir Zelensky has been ordered not to leave Ukraine, even though he knows that the Russian army has come gunning for him and his family. The reason for Satan's order to German masqueraders is that, as prophesied in the Bible, Satan has a strategy for Germany to conquer the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel, which involved starting a civil war in all these countries with the help of German masqueraders and their allies, fighting non German whites in these countries, while Germany and its allies attacked from the outside. German masqueraders in the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel have been building alliances in their countries. In the United States, these allies include all minorities, African Americans, Hispanics, Indians, Chinese, and other ethnic groups. The Germans have their ways of asking people to demonstrate their loyalty and total commitment to their side through fight white Americans of non German descent. They have fabulously financially rewarded people who demonstrate their loyalty to them by murdering a white American of non German descent. Between 9 to 10 million such murders have been committed. That means there are close to 5 to 7 million beneficiaries who have committed such murders, taking into account the fact that more than one person may have benefited financially from one murder. Then, counting spouses, children, and grandchildren, the number benefiting from these incentives and being loyal to the German masquerader side may be as many as 50 to 60 million. This number includes people who committed murders in their own countries of origin and were rewarded with entry into the United States, and then further their spouses, children, and grandchildren. We know Germany and China are preparing for the Third World War against the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. Their goal is to exterminate white Americans of non German descent, man, woman, and child, take over the land for themselves and possibly their allies. I doubt if they will ultimately allow their non white allies to remain in the land, but for the time being they are to be used just as African Americans have been used by the German masqueraders throughout American history since the white man came. Now, at the same time, German masqueraders in our countries are preparing for civil war and they are lining up allies. Their potential allies, besides those who have committed murders, need to demonstrate their commitment to the masquerader side. The masquerader method is to prepare lists and ask the entire US population to either call them or use a website to make their choice to side with the German masqueraders. The commitment is to agree to exterminate white Americans of non-German descent, man, woman, and child. So I'm issuing this warning to all those who have committed to join the German masquerader side to utterly destroy the non-masquerader side and their allies. We all know what prophecy says. The United States, British Commonwealth nations, and the State of Israel are going to be militarily defeated by a German-led alliance and sold as slaves around the world. That is a milestone event that will take place with certainty, as America shows no inclination to repent of its sins. But how we get there is not absolutely clear, though there are guidelines which I have discussed in my detailed book World and Bible Prophecy, available free on my religion website www.churchofgodmessage.com. Now, before we get to the military defeat, there is likely to be a deadly civil war in our countries of America and British Commonwealth nations. We know that German masquerader-led coalition will fight, but so will we fight. So here is my warning to you all on the who've joined the masquerader side. The masquerader prophets are using the prophet Ezekiel's prophecy to decide to exterminate our side, man, woman, and child. Ezekiel chapter 9 verses 4 to 11 state, "And the Lord said unto them, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem." This applies to America and British Commonwealth nations because Jerusalem was the combined capital of ancient Israel. "And set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof." This refers to the true church of God sighing and crying because of all sins in America. Continuing, "And to the others he said in my hearing, Go after him through the city, and smite." Let not your eye spare, neither have pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids, meaning unmarried young women, and little children and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. And he said unto them, Defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain. Go forth. And they went forth and slew in the city. And it came to pass, while they were slaying them, and I, meaning Ezekiel the prophet, and I was left, that I fell upon my face and cried, and said, O Lord God, will you destroy all the residue of Israel in the pouring out of your fury upon Israel? Then said he unto me, The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, The Lord has forsaken the earth, and the Lord sees not. And as for me also, my eye will not spare, neither will I have pity, but I will recompense their way upon their head. And behold, the man clothed with linen, which was actually an angel, which had the inkhorn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as you have commanded me. By choosing to join the masquerader side, you are agreeing to do this to us. My warning to you is that this is the very judgment you are choosing for yourselves and for your children at our hands during the Civil War. That is the judgment on all the masqueraders which I have been voicing for 2 decades. We and they cannot live together in the land. They are to be exterminated, man, woman, and child, in the Civil War, as they plan to do to us. If you have already made your choice and joined the masquerader side, you will be subjected to the same judgment as them. This judgment applies to everyone who makes this choice, including masqueraders themselves, Italians, African Americans, Hispanics, Indians, Chinese, and all other immigrants or all other people. These truly are times that will try men's souls. You know the atrocities and evil the German masqueraders have committed in America and British Commonwealth nations and against African Americans, and how they have used and abused them. But because prophecy indicates that they will ultimately be winners in war, most of you have chosen to join them and participate in the evil that they have planned for us. We will not spare you during the Civil War. African Americans, besides joining the winning side, I can only understand who else is driving your decision. Your leaders, including all your civil rights icons, have committed murder to gain their positions, just as Martin Luther King Jr. did. All of them will pay with their lives for that crime. To protect their hides, they are leading most African Americans to make the decision to join the masquerader side. Again, these are times that are trying your souls. Don't be swayed by condemned men and make the right choice for yourselves and your families. The right choice simply is to not join the masquerader side to commit evil. Here is where the question of getting your spiritual house in order and doing the right thing becomes relevant. You can join the evil side and save yourselves because it will be temporarily the winning side. But then read my book, World and Bible Prophecy. It shows that God Himself will destroy those who join the evil side. So, my advice to you all is to have the fortitude and courage to do the right thing. Do not join in with the evil, the German masqueraders. You may have temporary victory and save yourselves for 2 to 3 years, but then there is every likelihood that you will not survive. During the coming civil war, those who have not joined the evil side will not be harmed by us, but those who have joined the evil side will be exterminated by us as you plan to exterminate us. Remember, we will know who has joined the masquerader side because all computer lists can be hacked. Now, I have stated our plans in the past a few times. Race problems in our countries will remain as long as there are different races dwelling together. God knows human beings. That is why he separated the races by giving them different languages according to race during the Tower of Babel incident. Therefore, our plan is to let people of different races go to their countries of origin. We will not send people empty handed. In fact, as ancient Israel came out of Egypt during the Exodus under the leadership of Moses by spoiling the Egyptians as payment for unpaid wages, we will make sure that people who are sent to their countries will receive plenty of help in settling down in their countries of origin. Ancient Egypt did not pay the Israelites voluntarily. They paid to save their skins when God brought plagues on them. But we will provide this huge compensation because it is the right thing to do. Those who have joined the masquerader side will not have opportunity because they will not survive the civil war at our hands. Of course, all this is just plans. It all depends on the outcome of the civil war. Land in America belongs to Native Americans and white Americans who settled it. Our plan is to also to divide the land with Native Americans proportionately. They will be given choice of land to set up their own country and govern themselves. They will be provided all the help they might request from us, but all others will be asked to go back to their countries of origin. I hope all Americans, particularly African Americans and Hispanics, will pay heed to my warning and not join the masquerader side. If you do join, I have laid out our plans for you because we know what you're planning for us. I hope you will choose wisely and do the right thing. There is not much time left to begin setting your spiritual house in order. We know that the masqueraders have exploited the feelings of the citizens of former British colonies against the British for colonizing them. When they were offered fabulous financial rewards to murder Britons, those lacking in moral character took advantage of the incentives and committed murder. Many of them ended up in the United States and British Commonwealth nations. Now, African Americans were sold the same bill of goods, blaming people of British descent for slavery. The masqueraders are masters at lying and distorting the truth. While the British did have a hand in bringing slaves to America, they also ended it forcibly because enough people were convinced it was it was not right to continue enslaving people. While people of British descent were trying to end slavery, the masqueraders fought the Civil War to keep the institution intact. They got away for nearly 150 years with their perfidy not being discovered, but it has been discovered after their descendants were recognized. Now they want you to be on their side with threats of dire consequences if you don't join them so that they can now win the Civil War. Again, you, meaning all Americans, have a hard choice to make. If the masqueraders win the war, they will massacre you if you did not choose to join their side. But if we win the Civil War, we will destroy you, man, woman, and child, as we will destroy all masqueraders and their allies for all the atrocities they have already committed and then for fighting against us in the Civil War. You have been fed fake arguments that colonialism was inherently evil and morally reprehensible, but not from God's point of view. God prophesied in Genesis 49, verse 22. It states, Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall, meaning they will expand beyond their national boundaries. That in the end time, descendants of the patriarch Joseph, America, and British Commonwealth nations will be a colonizing people. So God's purpose in doing so was to bring blessings to the colonized people per the prophecy given about Abraham's descendants in Genesis 12, verses 2 to 3. And I will make of you, Abraham, a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless you, and curse him that curses you. And in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So, besides the USA and British Commonwealth nations being the economic engines of the world and bringing prosperity to almost all nations on earth by importing from them, they have also brought God's spiritual blessings by making access to spiritual knowledge available to most nations on earth, but particularly to their colonies. They did that by translating the Bible into virtually every language on earth and making Bibles available to all nations on earth at heavily subsidized prices or even free of cost. Terrible catastrophes will soon strike the earth. Everybody can understand that because Germany and China are already planning a nuclear war against the United States and British Commonwealth nations. God always warns humanity before allowing global catastrophes to strike the earth. He used Noah to warn the pre flood world for 100 years before bringing the flood to drown all humanity except the eight in the ark. He has been warning the world through his church for the past 100 years. I've been doing that personally for the past 15 years. God in the Bible also provides a way of escaping all the end time catastrophes alive. Humans simply would not understand that way of escape if they did not have access to the Bible. I have described that way of escape in my ebook titled The Only Guaranteed Way to Escape End Time Catastrophes at my website www.churchofgodmessage.com. People would also not know the salvation God is offering to all of humanity and the way to attain it, which is described only in the Bible. That's why access to the Bible is so important for every human being. The British and American people provided that access. It was God's doing in fulfillment of his prophecy that Abraham's descendants would bring that blessing to all nations. That was God's primary purpose for colonization. I, as an Indian, resented the British for ruling over us as colonizers until I understood God's purpose for colonization and the other benefits we derived from it. I was introduced to the Bible and Christianity. Through the English language, we obtained access to all the published scientific and technical knowledge, in addition to knowledge of world history, geography, law and justice, and other disciplines. In fact, the benefits of the English language being imposed on us have been so great that citizens of almost all semi developed or less developed nations in the world are making all possible efforts to learn the language. Also, remember, no people are willing to give up their culture and ways easily. But colonization forced the British and American ways, political and governance systems on the world. All of Africa, India, and many other nations were given to horrible superstitions and destructive ways such as devil worship and voodooism and Hinduism. Forcing British ways on all colonies helped them get rid of most of their superstitions, or at least be forcibly introduced to alternative ways based mainly on the Bible. That was God's purpose in helping the British and Americans to colonize much of the world. This is another simple benefit question to ask. Which African American would like to have been born in Africa as compared to being born in America? You can answer that question for yourselves. Now, some people will simply not allow themselves to be convinced that colonization and coming to America, even as slaves, were ultimately good for them. They want to see the downfall of America and British Commonwealth nations and take their vengeance on them. But Jeremiah prophesies that all who desire to do that will face disaster in Jerusalem 2 verse 3, which states, Israel was holiness to the Lord, the first fruits of his increase, meaning the first people he is harvesting for his kingdom. All that devour him will offend. Disaster will come upon them, says the Lord. Obadiah the prophet makes it up very clear on how anyone who mistreats the Americans, the British, and the Jews in their time of distress will be treated. In Jeremiah 1 verse 15, in Obadiah 1 verse 15. The day of the Lord is near for all nations. As you have done, it will be done to you. Your deeds, meaning reprisal of rewards, will return upon your own head. God is going to punish the British, American, and Jewish people for their national sins, but people will have thoughts of taking vengeance against them to destroy them. God says those who do such a thing will offend him. He will inflict the same punishment on them. What they do will be done to them. I hope all those who are seriously considering joining the German masquerader side give serious thought to what God will have in store for them. But before that, during the civil war, we will not spare you. As you plan to do to us, we will exterminate you, man, woman, and child. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube channel and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjeet Saini to view and get information on the latest videos. Some people do not have the time to go through the full length of videos. They find it more convenient to read the text of the video. Unfortunately, YouTube does not provide the facility to make the text of my videos available on YouTube. But fortunately, Facebook does provide that facility. So I make the text of my videos available on my Facebook channel, which you can then easily copy.